Welcome, everybody, to the Fanmouth Daily Fantasy Baseball Breakdown for Tuesday, July the 1st. I'm Joe Marsh. Got a couple of guests today. Mr. Fantasy himself, Dave Del Grande, is here. How are you doing, Dave?
Oh, I'm just a guest today? Haha.
No winning with these guys. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hey Joe, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. We got the U.S. taking on Belgium today. I think we're going to pull off a win here, but before we do that, let's get to a little fantasy baseball. Big slate of games. We're covering all the nighttime games, 7 o'clock Eastern time and later start games. Go through all the positions, give you a little advice, break them down. For me, pitching, I think it's pretty cut and dry today. I think Mike Leake is the top choice. He's been good all year. He was a bit rocky in his last few starts, but he faced some very tough teams. He faced, Milwaukee, the Giants a couple times. So it's a bit different here because he's facing San Diego. His biggest problem this year has been giving up the long ball, but pitching in San Diego, that's not as much of a problem. You look at the Padres, what their offense has been doing in the month of June. They're averaging just about 5.2 hits per game and about 2.2 runs per game. They've been terrible. They only managed one hit again last night. I think Leake is a standout. And then to go with him, I think you can use Price. I don't think it'll cost you a ton. There's a few spots you can save on offense to put those two together. Price has been outstanding in June. He's one of the hottest pitchers going right now. 2.27 ERA, 12.27 strikeouts per nine. That's a huge number in the month of June. 0.93 WHIP. The Yankees, their offense hasn't been great. They're 26th in runs scored in the month of June. Also, Price has a good history against some of their key guys like Teixeira, Gardner, and Ellsbury. So I think it'll be a good night for him. I think that's the way to go, is to pair those two. Jeff, what do you think of pitcher?
Yeah, and the Yankees are really not that great against left-handers. They're average at best. And Price has had double-digit strikeouts in 5 straight games now. So the strikeout probability is definitely there. I like Leake with the matchup against San Diego, but so is everyone else. I think that I'm probably going to go a little bit contrarian today and go with Tim Lincecum. Coming off of a no-hitter, it's common for everyone to fade pitchers in the following start. There are a lot of stats to back that up, and good reason for it usually. But the problem is that, much like with Kershaw last time out, Kershaw only used like 109 pitches for that no-hitter. His following game, it wasn't a problem. Most of the time in a no-hitter, you're throwing 130 pitches or something, just trying to get through. A manager usually would pull you, but just wants to see you get the no-hitter, so you stay in. Lincecum is pretty much in the same boat Kershaw was in. He only threw 113 pitches his last time out, which is pretty common for him. He's done that 3 or 4 times so far this year, and his following starts after those high pitch counts, he actually has done really well. So I think I'm going to roll with Lincecum here because you're talking about San Diego being awful, and they're at a completely different level. But you want to talk about other bad offenses, St. Louis is definitely in the mix there as the very bottom. Besides San Diego, who's scored like 50 fewer runs than any other team, you've got St. Louis pretty much right below them or right above them. So I really like Lincecum at AT&T Park, Big Pitchers Park, going against Lincecum coming off the no-hitter.
All right, Dave, help us out. What do you think of pitcher?
Yeah, I mean, I like your choices there. I think that, I mean, when I look at today's matchups, I see 13 different pitchers who I would like to go against. I mean, today's got to be the weakest pitching day of the season so far. You've got bad, proven starters. You've got guys who are unproven, who don't look like they're going to be very good. You have some hot-hitting teams against mediocre pitchers. I mean, I think that in the hitting ranks, there's a ton of possibilities. And when that's the case, you can find bargains right and left. And so I'm interested today in looking at the very top of the pitching chart and seeing, are these guys worth their high prices? And if they are, I'm going with them. And I do think the top 2 pitchers are worth their prices. You've already mentioned Price. He's a very strong selection. I actually rate Strasburg ahead of him. The Rockies on the road, we all know they don't hit well on the road. Strasburg, when he gets it going, he can strike them out with the best of them. And again, Washington's up against terrible Colorado pitcher, so they figured to put up a lot of runs like they did last night. That couldn't be firing on all cylinders now. Their offense is fully healthy. So I do like some middle price pitchers. I mean, obviously Leake, a lot of people like. I rate Buchholz ahead of him. Buchholz has been pitching really well. He's pitching against the Cubs, who are one of the worst hitting offensive teams. Alvarez tonight is pitching against Philadelphia, another really bad offensive team. I think you've got some really good bargain pitchers tonight, but I see no reason to go there because I think Strasburg and Price are well worth their prices.
And you think there are some bargains offensively to complement those guys?
Oh, like I said, I think that there are, I think there are 13 pitchers that I want to go against. And looking at the hitting chart, I mean, I can find a bargain or two at almost every position just based on who they're up against. And I mean, just taking, for example, a game Jeff mentioned already, this Giants game against the Cardinals. The Giants aren't hitting really well, but the Cardinals are pitching Gonzalez tonight. I mean, this isn't a guy, this isn't a strong six starter or a minor league prospect. This guy's a middle reliever pitching in an emergency situation on the road, a lefty against a righty lineup that he can hit the ball, really well. I mean, and here the Giants have this new first baseman who's listed as third base on the Fanmouth charts, Duval, who homered in his first game, a big power hitter. I mean, here we go again. You basically get him for free, and in a matchup where this is a dream matchup of a power hitting righty against a really bad lefty in his home ballpark at a low price. And I just happen to mention his name. I think there are a dozen Duvals out there available among the hitters tonight. So as I said, I'm willing to pay the high price on the pitchers. And like yesterday, high price on the pitchers isn't 20, 21,000. You're getting both of these guys for 3,000-4,000 cheaper than that, and that even makes it more attractive.
All right.
I like Buchholz too. The problem is 3 of his last 5 games he's had less than 1 fantasy point. So he's been a little rough lately, but the matchup is really good, and I don't mind Buchholz in there either.
Well, I'll say this about Leake as well. And Leake is coming off a 12 strikeout game. But all the talk after that game is, even I heard their manager say, you know what, this is not a strikeout pitcher, and he better not be trying to strike out 12 guys every game because that's not his style. He's a guy that throws the first pitch over the plate, lets guys hit ground balls. I mean, I think his average strikeouts before that game was like 3 or 4, and so yes, he's pitching against San Diego, but he's probably not going to strike out a whole lot of guys. And as we well know, in the fantasy game, in the Fanmouth game, those strikeouts are worth their weight in gold. So that would be the only negative I would find about Leake.
All right. Let's move on to the next position, which is catcher. A lot of good options out there. I think Posey's a good option. Wilson Ramos, I like again. Facing another terrible lefty in Friedrich. He's been bad in his 2 starts, giving up a 356 average to righties. Ramos is hitting 368 against lefties, so I think he's good. But for me, I think this is a day to go cheap. I really like Stephen Vogt. I'm going to like him a lot going forward as well. As long as Reddick is out, he should be seeing plenty of at-bats. He's hitting 343 in the month of June, hitting 411 against righties. So hopefully he has a better spot in the lineup. I think he was hitting 7th yesterday, but still came up with 3 hits. So that's a guy that I like a lot, and I probably will like going forward as long as Dave would say, he's practically free. I think he's 500 above the minimum. Dave, what do you got at catcher?
Well, I'm going to only be able to spend a lot of money on a couple positions. I think I'm going to spend it in the infield rather than the outfield tonight. I think Posey is a very obvious play. I already mentioned Gonzalez pitching for St. Louis tonight. Posey's my home run pick of the day. Yes, my guy hit a homer yesterday, Joe. But here I've talked about all these bargains that are available, so I find that I'm going to have to support myself here. Russell Martin of the Pirates. The Pirates are a very hot hitting team. They're going up against Miley tonight. Miley has given up as many homers as any of the pitchers going tonight. He's a lefty who gives up homers to righties. Martin is a home run threat. He's very low on the salary chart. I think you could do a whole lot worse than to go with him tonight.
Jeff, what do you got behind the plate?
I like Posey, but I don't know about him hitting a home run. He really hasn't done that much at all in June. He's had a really nice June, just not really hitting for much home run power. But if he is going to do it, it's probably going to be against a weak lefty. So I do like Posey. And I think another good guy is Salvador Perez going against Ricky Nolasco. He had a home run yesterday. Yes, it's a pitcher's park, but catcher position to me is really weak today. So I think you're going to be, not extremely happy with whatever catcher you roll out there. But those are mainly the two guys I'm looking at. I think Vogt is a good one too. You mentioned him, Joe. But and like Dave said, the Giants are built to crush lefties. So you get some of those Giants right-handers in there, and you should be in good shape.
All right, we'll move over to first base. God, I wanted to start Encarnacion against Estrada today, but that's a day game. That's looking like just the perfect matchup. Jeff, what do you like at first?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Yeah, I saw that game on the slate and didn't realize that it wasn't a night game till last minute. But yeah, I had a bunch of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for Encarnacion on the pricing chart. I'm like, I don't care what he costs. I'm starting him. But what do you got for the night?
The guy I've got is Chris Davis. Like yesterday, we talked about, okay, start all your right-handed bats against Saunders, and I said don't start any left-handed bats. And the lefties, sure enough, went 0 for 8, and the righties put up like 7 runs. So today's totally different, though. It's not about righty-lefty, anything like that. You use all the lefties you want, all the righties you want from Baltimore because they're going up against Nick Martinez, a guy who's given up 24 earned runs in his last 28 and a third innings. I mean, really, just stack all the Baltimore Orioles that you want, and Chris Davis would be my home run pick for the day.
Dave, what do you got?
Well, first off, I agree with that. I think Davis is a very good play at first base. I'd put Cabrera right up there with him. I think that Mills of the A's is probably every bit as bad a pitcher as Martinez is. He had one. From the scrap heap, he came in. He had one decent game. He got a lot of headlines, and then he reverted back to the mean the next game. Detroit eats up left-handed pitchers. They're a hot-hitting team. Mills is a terrible pitcher. I expect Detroit to score a lot of runs in this game. But my pick here, again, I'm not looking to spend a lot of money. I'm going to go, and I think there's some decent, value plays, and I'm going to go right to the bottom of the first base price chart and give you Campbell of the Mets, a big, powerful right-handed hitter up against Minor. Minor has been terrible lately. He's given up a lot of homers, and here's a, guy you get basically for free, big home run hitting first baseman. Hasn't hit a whole lot yet this year, but I think the potential is there, especially against a lefty who gives up a lot of homers. So I'm gonna give you a value play there and go with Campbell of the Mets.
All right, I'm with Jeff on the Orioles. I actually list Davis and Pierce as my 2 first base choices. Yesterday with Machado out, Davis played third base, Pierce played first, and I was kind of kicking myself for going Cron over Pierce later on in the afternoon. I was like, man, Pierce is the guy. I mentioned him on Twitter. Had 2 home runs yesterday. That's 4 homers in his last 12 games. He's got 18 hits over that span. He's hitting .361 in June. Very hot guy, still at a very good price. I think he's a good choice as well. There's a lot to be considered for your utility, but I think Pierce should be in consideration for your utility today. Dave, what do you got for me at second base?
Well, if I'm not playing Cabrera at first base, I'm playing Kinsler at second base. I think he's a standout. I mean, Altuve is a great play no matter who they're up against. But Kinsler, a home run hitting second baseman up against Mills, is a huge mismatch. As I said, Detroit's scoring a lot of runs. They're facing a terrible pitcher tonight. And so I'm going to spend money. This is going to be my biggest purchase in the infield that's not Posey. And I'll give you Kinsler at second base tonight.
Jeff?
Until further notice, Jose Altuve is my guy.
Man.
He injured his elbow yesterday, but he didn't leave the game. He said he's going to play tonight, that he's going to be in the lineup. And he didn't even get a hit yesterday, but still stole a base somehow. So I think that's a guy that until you start to see like an 0 for 10 slump or something with no steals, I'm going to be putting him in every day.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he was 0 for yesterday, but that wasn't enough to deter me. I'm like, that's a bad game against a good pitcher. I'm still riding him, still assuming he's in the hot streak, still has stolen a base in 7 straight games despite not having a hit. So yeah, I'm with you. I think he still could be in the middle of the hot streak. So I'm gonna ride it out a bit longer. Third base, Jeff, start us off over there.
I'll go with Beltre over there. I think I'm spending a lot less than Dave is at pitcher, which is a little bit weird, but that's leaving me with. I mean, I see why Dave likes it.
Yeah, doesn't that feel good?
It does. We'll see how it works out. But I've got all these exciting hitters in my lineup: Adrian Beltre, T.J. McFarland. Dave talked about these relievers that are just being thrown in today to make spot starts, and that's gonna end up making for some high-scoring games today. So usually when you've got a spot starter that go 4 to 5 innings and the bullpen does the most of the work, and Baltimore does not have a very good bullpen. So I expect to be high-scoring. I definitely want some exposure to the Rangers, and Beltre is the best hitter on the team, so give me Beltre.
Yeah, you look at Beltre, 13 for his last 23, hitting 565 over his last 7 games. Absolutely one of the hottest hitters in the league. That's a great call. Again, I like him. I also like Rendon, who I liked yesterday, a guy you're always going to want against a lefty. Friedrich qualifies as a bad lefty. So those are both good choices. I would give the edge to Beltre, though. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and Jeff, well, yes, but I don't have that kind of money to spend at third base, unfortunately. But yes, I do think he stands out at third. But Jeff makes a good point. You know, we talked earlier about Martinez and how bad he is, and against both righties and lefties. I'm not sure he's any worse than Friedrich, than Mills, than McFarland, than Gonzalez. I mean, tonight's a night of, really, really bad pitchers. And we're not even talking about, like I said, the guys who have established the fact this year that they're not very good. Guys like Miley and Nolasco, Shields, Jackson. Even Matsuzaka. Matsuzaka might be like the 10th worst pitcher going tonight, and there are other days when he was the worst pitcher going. So, I mean, there's just a plethora of good options to go with here tonight, and so I think I'd love to have Zimmerman or Rendon going up against Friedrich. Sure. Beltre obviously I think is a standout play. Castellanos is a guy, batting in the middle of the Detroit lineup against Mills. But I mentioned him earlier, and I'll roll the dice with him. I'll go with Duval of the Giants tonight against Martinez. Again, a kind of a homer or bust guy who led the minor leagues in home runs before he was called up about a week ago, homered in his major league debut. Tonight he faced the Reds 4 games in a row, and the Reds rolled out pretty decent right-handed pitchers every game. Now they've gotten a day off. Now they've gotten this, the soft lefty coming in. It's kind of the type of pitcher who he was brought up to platoon against. And so I would not be surprised at all if he hit a homer tonight at a very cheap price.
Yeah, and looking at, you mentioned Jackson as well. I like Brock Holt at third base as well. I mean, Jackson does not get lefties out. He's given up like a 325 average to lefties. I think Brock Holt, you mentioned you may need to save some money. I think he's a good, cheaper play. Over at shortstop, staying with that game, you guys like Buck Holtz a bit, but I like Starlin Castro in this matchup. He's hit all 11 of his home runs against righties. 8 of them have come on the road. You look at Buck Holt's 8.66 ERA at home. Giving up a 3.49 average with 6 home runs to righties. I know there's not a lot to like on the Cubs. I wish there was more to attack Buchholz with, but I think Castro's the top play at shortstop. Jeff, what do you think?
I'm going to be repetitive and go with Elvis Andrus for the same reasons I like Beltre. Being that I just talked about Beltre, can't really add too much more besides the fact that the over-under in this game is 9.5. There's no other game projected to be higher scoring than it, so just, again, get some exposure to that game.
Dave?
Take the over on every game tonight, you'll make money. All right. That's my tip of the day. I got to give you credit for my choice here at shortstop today. I don't like giving you credit. But first let me say
chops. Look, my chops are busted. Look.
Let me say that I think Hardy would be an easy play to make tonight and against Martinez. I think, we mentioned all the Nationals yesterday. We must have mentioned 6 different names. We didn't mention Desmond. I don't think we could have mentioned him easily among all the other guys. He's the guy that had the monster game. Again, a very similar matchup tonight. Yesterday against Fland, a lefty. Today against Friedrich, another lefty. I think you can I think you could put Desmond right back in there. But Joe, you mentioned Suarez yesterday. I think you've mentioned him a couple of times before. You basically get him for free. Oh, not really, but he's a little higher priced than some of my other guys. But you get a nice righty hitter in there against Mills. Another really bad pitcher. So I'll go for the cheap price here. I'll ride with Joe on this one and go with Suarez as my shortstop.
All right, Jeff, what do you think of that?
Go with Andrews.
All right.
What do you think about going with Joe in general?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Fade Joe Marsh.
Not offensively. On offense, you can trust me. I'm a guy you can count on. All right. Outfield, I think there's a ton to talk about. Jeff, kick us off. What do you think?
Oh, I get first crack at outfield. That's new.
Well, yeah.
I'm going with the same guys I went with yesterday, so it's kind of boring. But Dave can tell you how many points I put up yesterday. Cruz and Adam Jones again from Baltimore won a bunch of guys in that game, and then the sneaky plays I talked about yesterday, Endy Chavez and James Jones. James Jones got me 4 hits yesterday, 3 stolen bases, and a couple runs at almost nothing, free as you guys would say, almost. So I really like stacking those guys when they're facing right-handers, hitting at the top of the order, and this is a good spot for him today too. McCutchen, that game looks pretty ugly, like it might get rained out, but if McCutchen is playing today, then I really like him. He was going to be my home run pick, but I bailed on him because I wasn't sure if the game was going to get in or not. And he's a guy that crushes lefties and really also has a lot more power against lefties over his career. So that would be another guy I'm looking at. And just so everyone knows, Polanco is supposed to be rested tonight, so don't play him.
All right, Dave, I'll clean up. You go ahead.
Yes, I did lose my matchup with Jeff yesterday, but it should be pointed out, and this is all my fault. You learn your lessons playing this game. You've got to watch that weather chart. I lost that matchup because Trout got rained out. I had a high-scoring game against him. I don't know why I lost by 10 or 15 points. I gave up one spot because I didn't, bother to take a look at the weather was bad in the Angels game. So, but all credit to Jeff there. Although I did warn yesterday not to play Cruz. He's in a big slump, and I would not play him tonight. Although I do like Jones in that game, I don't have that kind of money to spend. Markakis is a good play, a nice value play. You save a couple thousand, you get that same matchup. So I'd say the same thing about the Pittsburgh game, although I will follow Jeff's advice and check the weather charts later on. That McCutchen is a great play. I almost made him my home run choice of the day. But I don't really have that kind of money to spend, and I think Harrison is a nice second option in that game. Again, you get to play someone in that game. You get to go up against Miley with a right-handed hitter, which I'm all in favor of. So as I said, I think Jones and McCutchen are probably my 2 best outfield plays. I can't afford them. I'll go with Markakis. I'll go with McCutchen. I'll go with Harrison. I'm surprised at the price on Rios. I mean, I know he hasn't been doing great lately. I think he's got a ton of potential. He's up against McFarland. You get him at about $2,000 less than I think you should get him for. He's a nice, I hate to call him this, but he's a nice value play. And so I think all 3 of those guys are kind of mid-price guys that hopefully you can fit into your lineup. Parmalee of the Twins is going to be one of the much lower on the charts. He's up against Shields tonight, who hasn't been pitching well. Parmalee's been hitting really well. He's a guy if you really need to save money in the outfield, you might consider going with him. So I do think there are a lot of bargains out there, a lot of middle price guys who I think have very high potential tonight, and I do think there's some lower price guys as well to go with. So not a day you have to spend a whole lot in the outfield, although, like I said, I do like Jones and McCutchen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll talk about some of the lower price guys. A couple more Orioles. I mean, you could make a case for a ton of Orioles tonight. Markakis, you mentioned, he's hit 6 of his 7 home runs against righties. Martinez given up a .331 batting average to lefties. And then you look at Delman Young. Delman Young hits righties very well, .364, hits .367 at home. So, I mean, that's 4 different Orioles outfielders to consider. Plus, we got 2 Orioles first basemen we've talked about. It's a lot of Orioles. You're going to have to decide which ones are the best to be in your lineup.
All of them.
Well, there's a limit, right? You can only have 4 or something?
That's correct.
Make
Yeah.
multiple lineups.
Multiple lineups. Start all the Orioles. All right.
Yep.
And then Matt Joyce. We haven't, we kind of tried to ignore him a little bit, but he's got 3 home runs in his last 2 games. You look at his record versus Kuroda, 3 home runs and 16 at bats. I think he's a decent low end option as well, the way he's been hitting.
Hey, one more thing, Dave.
Yes.
Trout was not going to score you 26 points so that you could beat me yesterday.
You lost to Jeff, man. Come on, Dave.
Ask him how many points he scored. I saw a little, one
What
of
did he
these.
score? 50?
One of these metal things next to his name this morning. He was,
Why?
Yeah.
He was hotter than the temperature yesterday.
No one outscored me yesterday, Joe.
Oh wow. That's probably because I didn't play you guys. All right. Anyways, moving on. We'll go ahead and go into our final word. I think we're somewhat in agreement on pitcher. I think Price and Leak are the top choices. Obviously, Jeff wants to fade that a little bit, but I mean that's the safe way to go. But he's correct that pretty much everyone's going to be on Leak the same way everyone was on Latos yesterday. Although that worked out pretty well. He pitched a good game, and then. So we've talked about it. I like using Steven Vogt today. I think that's important for lineup building. You get a very cheap option, can probably get you a couple hits, and that'll just help you build the rest of your lineup using some pretty pricey pitchers, some pretty pricey guys around the infield. Steve Pearce, again, of the Orioles, a lot of Orioles to consider today. I think he's important as well. You can use him in your utility. That'll give you a lot of flexibility to start the guys that you want. And then the last thing that I'll say is that, on nights like this where there's so much to like, it doesn't necessarily make it any easier to win because it all comes down to your process of paring it down. If there's 15 guys you like, you still only have 10 spots, so you have to be sure you pick the right 10. So that's my final word for today. Dave, go ahead and give us a final word.
Well, I think that if you normally, I would say, you want to focus on a couple of different matchups and play 2 or 3 guys from those games. Like I mentioned before, there are too many of those matchups tonight to focus on. I mean, the hardest thing about tonight is going to be only playing 4 Orioles, only playing 4 Nationals, only playing 4 Tigers. All 3 of those gates are very well. Washington's not a hot-hitting team, although they're finally back at full strength. They put up some nice numbers yesterday in their first game with Harper back. They got a nice lineup when Harper's in there, and they move Rendon over to. I mean, that's as good a lineup I think you got in the whole game. But Baltimore and Detroit are maybe the 2 hottest hitting teams in the league. Pittsburgh is right up there with them. They're going against Miley. I mean, I just think there are so many of these options. My recommendation today is going to be spend the money on Strasburg and Price. They're going to get a lot of strikeouts. They're going to pitch very good games. And then wait till the lineups come out and see. There's going to be some sleeper players for Baltimore. Like you said, Pierce, if Pierce is batting in the middle of their lineup, there's a guy to go with. Who's the cheapest Washington guy in there? We talked about Suarez of Detroit. Find a cheap San Francisco guy. Find a cheap Texas guy. These guys, they're going up against Gonzalez, McFarland, Mills, Friedrich, Martinez. I mean, we jump on one of these matchups on a regular night. There are 5 of them worth considering tonight. So I think you're going to find at least one cheap guy in each one of those matchups, and that's going to make the choice to use the high price, the high potential pitchers a wise choice.
Jeff, final word.
Yeah, I talked about you could go contrarian, and I probably am in a sense by going with Tim Lincecum instead of going with just Leak and Price, who I believe will be the best options today. So going with Lincecum instead of Price, say you do that, you're going to free up so much cap room to get the hitters that you want. And as we've talked about, there are a lot of attractive options out there. So if you can get your first choice or second choice at every position, that's a really nice thing. So that is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be having a lot of hitters that I like, and I'm going to be stacking a bunch of mini stacks, I guess. Beltre Andrews and then Chris Davis and some of the outfielders for Baltimore. Yeah, Nelson Cruz is in a slump, but that guy's got so much upside. Any game he can hit 2 home runs, and that's going to essentially win your matchup for you. So my advice is to really stack the positive games with the best hitters. For guys like Adrian Beltre, he's the best hitter on the team in one of the best matchups. Make sure you're getting the best players.
All right. That wraps us up for today. Thanks for joining me, guys. We will be back on Friday. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at PlayFanmouth. You can check out all of our rankings at blog.fanmouth.com. Go Team USA!